everybody. It is Monday, and this is Jack Hammer with the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. And a little bit different. We had a day off today, but that doesn't mean that the show stops. We're going to keep this thing rolling, and got a special guest with us today. We have Rohan. I'm going to butcher your name, Rohan, but your last name, I know it's Rohan. I'm going to say Chakravarthi.
Perfect. Yeah, you got it right on the dot. So there we go.
There we
intro is
go.
Good. That means it's going to be a good show.
Hey, we got it. We got that started. And then, if you don't know already, Rohan does a great job over with the 49ers Web Zone. Go check his workout over there. He's been at training camp. Have you been there every day over the first 10 days there, Rohan?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. And that's where this handy notebook over here comes in handy.
That's right. You've got to have a notebook. I'm on my second one because my first one was what I used last year for training camp, and I started off on that one. I'm already on to the next one. So you've been at 9 practices, right? Because there was one that wasn't open.
One closed one. Yeah. So I've been at 9.
Okay. Yeah. You've been at 9 of the 10. I've been at 8 of the 10. I missed like the Monday show, the Monday practice this last week. So, but for the most part, we've both been there the whole way, and just wanted to get you on, talk to you a little bit. I've seen a lot of good things about your work, and I also know that we were going to do a show together. I tried to reach out to you to do a show kind of during that dead period, but I think you had headed out to Europe, isn't that, or on vacation somewhere, right?
Yeah, I went to Europe for about a 2-week period, took a little break from this, and then we come back, and it's right into training camp season.
Fantastic. See, that's what you got to do. You get out of town, go hit Europe, go overseas, or do whatever you got to do, and then you come in here and you're ready to go. Real quick before we get started, just want to shout out some folks in the comment section. We got Philip, who says, "I'm here for the best training camp coverage on the internet. Keep up the great coverage, Jack." Thank you very much. And this is going to be even better because I got Rohan today. And then we've got Moonman, who says, "Jack, what's good, my man? Ready for the great detailed knowledge you spill. Go Niners." Dan Rostek, who is a member of the Toolbox, that's why he's got the $ next to him. He says, "What's up, faithful?" Lucas coming in from Austria says, "Let's go. Really looking forward to the show." And then the last one is Jan, who says, "Jack is one of the few who doesn't feel the need to peddle a player." Trey. Absolutely.
Oh,
no, but it's going to be fun. This is going to be a good one. Let's just start. Let's go ahead and then start there. Let's start off with the Trey Lance thing. So what is your takeaway from Trey Lance 10 practices into the 2022 season?
Now, let me preface with this. I was not there at 2021, unlike Jack. So Jack has the full-on comparison of 21 to 22 and the understanding kind of how Trey Lance has changed both in his progression in his development, but also against the type of defense that he's playing. However, in 2022, straight up from what I'm seeing, the honest thoughts from me are Trey Lance has been inconsistent. You start off, first of all, you can just take the completion percentage. I'm a guy who always praises context. Hence, when I go on my streams, I talk about the context behind every throw. But the reason that I say that, the one strength that Trey Lance, in my opinion, had over the first couple of practices was, despite his lower in completion percentage, a couple of his throws were more accurate than the completion percentage showed, specifically down the field. Through the first 5 practices, I had charted Trey Lance at 6 of 12 on downfield throws, with 3 of those being accurate balls just being broken up by the defense. However, in the second week of practice, Trey Lance has wavered with his accuracy down the field, specifically, whereas where I initially thought that the 49ers might lead a little more with that downfield passing attack, I think I've kind of backed off a little bit from that claim because of how Trey Lance's inconsistencies have gone. So when you talk about the overall performance of Trey Lance, I'm specifically focusing right now on deep passing. That's just one example of his inconsistency where he started off better, but has wavered off a little bit. Some examples, over the last couple of practices, Trey Lance has had open receivers down the field. A perfect example, George Kittle beat Charvarius Ward on a route to the outside. It was somewhat like a tight end wheel. Beat him, and it was about a 30-yard pass downfield, but Trey Lance overthrew the open Kittle for about 5 yards. You talk about a 15-yard out route yesterday for Deebo Samuel, working against Deommodore Lenoir, and given the explosiveness, Trey Lance tried to throw it with anticipation to the outside and aired it about 10 yards behind the receiver. And so those are just a couple of plays, but he's been inconsistent. There have been good examples, and I still think we've yet to see the true form of Trey Lance because we don't know necessarily how he's going to perform under pressure, specifically with his ability to get away from the pocket, because players haven't been tackling yet. And so covered sacks or would-be sacks might not necessarily be would-be sacks. But overall, Trey Lance has been inconsistent, which leads me to kind of say that the 49ers, something I've anticipated this entire offseason, the 49ers, they're going to get their bread and butter on offense from the run game, especially when they start getting their entire offensive line out. I think this run game is really what's going to get this offense churning.
Yeah, and I'm with you. That's been my biggest takeaway is the inconsistency that we've seen from Lance. It's you get the great throw, right? And then you get the bad throw. And that's, I know you're talking about the deep balls, and those are gonna be a little bit hit or miss to a certain extent. But at the same time, like for me, I don't mind the bad throws on the deep balls if he's trying to throw it deep. And you take the shot.
Exactly.
Shot. If it's there, you take it. You know, there's a few balls like that you can't place any better. For me, and I agree with you, I think for me, the one thing that I've noticed with Trey Lance where he really struggles is when he's trying to throw the out route.
Outside the numbers.
It's outside the numbers, and it's specifically I think it's kind of specific to when it's an outside lined up receiver where that ball's he's got to get it out of his hand quick. He doesn't really have that ability to hitch and then kind of read and throw it, hit that back foot, and you got to drive it out there, right? Because it's a long throw, you can't wait, and so it's really kind of a timing throw. But you're right, it's been all over the place, and it's yesterday we saw it out in front on the throw to Ray McLeod. We saw it on the one that you talked about to Deebo Samuel. And then earlier in the week,
we've seen it a couple of times. This, like Lance, especially, I've seen it on one side compared to the other side. Lance, when you talk about him, like when he's trying to hit that out route, it's two things. I think he's first of all working on timing. Anticipation sometimes is something he tries to throw with, which leads him to throw it a little too far outside. Yesterday was the first time I saw on an out route where he missed deep. Normally he's missing wide on these out routes, which is something I think not only is an accuracy issue at the moment, it's more so a timing issue where he's just trying to get on the same page as receivers coming out of that break. Do I throw it before they come out of the break? Do I throw it while they're coming out of the break, or a second after they come out of the break in a way?
Yeah, I've seen, I've seen the in front, but I've also seen the ones that are like back here, right? That maybe that wasn't this week. That was probably, maybe I'm thinking we're Tuesday, because the days all kind of run together, and we had practice Friday through Sunday. And so I'm thinking like the Tuesday and Wednesday practice is more along those where the passes are behind them and those kind of things. But so, yeah, it's for me, I don't care so much about the misses on the deep balls, or even some of the ones that are broken up, like you were talking about, like the deep ball down the sidelines to Brandon. You can't put that ball out there any better, and Travarius Ward is just right there. I think it was Juwan Jennings, excuse me. Remember the play early in camp down the right sideline, and Jennings has a step on him. The ball's getting there, and just as it gets there, Ward knocks the ball out of his hand.
Yeah, I remember that exact one. It was early in practice, and that was actually, in my opinion, Lance threw 6 of 14. I believe it was the Thursday, the second day of practice, one of the bigger installs. Lance threw 6 of 14 on that day. I actually thought it was one of his better practices overall, because that ball specifically, there was the Ayuk ball 35 yards down the left sideline where Mosley pinned him out of bounds and then hit the ball as Ayuk tried to get 2 feet in, and then the Hufanga PBU on an accurate ball to McLeod. There were 3 balls that were incomplete down the field that Lance, in my opinion, had thrown good balls. It's just receivers couldn't make the play over the defensive back.
Yeah, well, the first one to Jennings, that's one where that was one that should have been. There was a really nice play by the DB. The other one, the Ayuk one on the left sideline you're talking about, where he goes up and he gets it. I liked Lance's decision making on that one, because I don't think that he was going to go there originally. I think what happened was because on that play, Nick Bosa had jumped off sides. And I think he saw the jump off sides, and so he decided to take the deep shot.
Yeah.
So at least I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt there, because I don't know what's going through his head, but I'm thinking that's what was happening. And he puts it up there, and he puts it in a spot where his receiver has a chance to make the catch. But it's high. He's got to jump up and get it, which is fine. Right. And as he's coming down, Mosley makes the catch. But here's the thing, and I think this is why one of the things that when it comes to the reporting of training camp practice, which is different, you see people talking about that being a drop from Ayuk. It's not a drop from Ayuk.
No, I didn't have that as a drop. No,
because he's up in the air and it's coming down and it's broken up. It's not a drop. I understand he had both hands on it, but it was going to be a hell of a catch if he made it.
And if he made the catch and not focusing on his feet being in air, Mosley would have pinned him, and it would have been out of bounds and complete also.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where it's kind of it's, one of the comment that I go do sometimes, I used to hear when I was little, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another, right? Whether you want to say it's good, you want to say it's bad. I mean, he's completing half of it. Half the time he's doing really good, half the time he's not doing good. And, I think that there's growth. I think there's potential there. And there's certain things that I like, and there's certain things that are making me wonder. And like yesterday, for example, started off hot, 3 in a row. The first two were spot on.
Mm-hmm.
The third one, which was the completion to Tyler
Fumagalli. Yeah.
I
had Fumagalli on that throw where it was just a little high. He was rolling outside off the, pressure came. He rolled out to his left. It was either Fumagalli or Croft, and it was a 5-yard throw, a little high. Fumagalli bobbled it at first, catches it afterwards.
Yeah. I'm trying to see really quick. He had the throw. Those are really nice. It was I don't know which one it was. It was, he started off with the throw to Samuel. Then he had the throw to Ayuk. Those two were nice. Then that third one, I don't know which was one of the tight ends, 47 or 49. I wrote it down as 47, but I really liked that play because it was a play in which he's getting pressure. He's moving to his left. He steps up. He's looking downfield. From where I was standing down at the end of the field, you could actually see him looking downfield before he takes the short route. So that was nice. And then it kind of got a little squirrely from there. It's going to just be interesting for me. The bigger takeaway right now, big picture, and this isn't necessarily 100% Trey Lance. It's the 49ers offense. They're not consistent in anything that they're doing right now. When they get to their move the ball periods, I understand that these aren't periods that are game planned for. It's all on the fly, makes sense. It's 1st and 10. This is a play we want to run on 1st and 10. Okay, cool. We picked up 4 yards. Now it's 2nd and 6. Here's one of our 2nd and 6 plays. That's what we're going to run. It's not like they've scripted it. Well, it's not scripted, but these are the plays that they've set up and they've been practicing throughout camp. And for me, when I look at that, they've moved the ball 6 times. They've scored twice, a touchdown, and I think it was a field goal. I don't know why they stopped the one drive the other day, but they did. But they've scored twice. They've thrown pick 6 and another pick deep in their own end. And the other 2 possessions were a single first down before having to punt. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me, the bigger picture there is that's more of my worry, my concern. My question is, can they move down the field? Because if you want to talk about a bright spot in Trey Lance, you talk about what he does in the red zone.
First of all, before we get, or in a way, it's in accordance to that. In the early parts, right, in the 11 on 11 without move the ball, you see Lance clearly looking downfield a lot more. And the reason is, the reason for some of these incompletions obviously is you're taking throws that you might not necessarily take in a game because you're trying to figure out what's working in the periods that don't necessarily count as real game situations. And then when you see in the first move the ball period yesterday, right, it was a 4-yard check down to Croft, then a 3-yard rush, then the almost interception to Ward. I thought that first throw was really nice. Lance facing pressure in his own end zone, surveying left to right, goes through all 3 of his progressions before hitting Croft on that check down, and then he runs out for 4 yards. I thought that was a nice play. But overall, your question, can they move the ball down the field? I think the answer is yes, but there's been only one formula that has shown to work when they've moved the ball down the field. And I think Kyle Shanahan is deliberately doing something with his play calling. In the first 2 drives over the last 2 move the ball periods with the first down on separate days, what has Kyle Shanahan done? He's first started with Trey Lance throwing the ball. Then on 2nd and long, he's chosen to run the football before setting up a 3rd and either long or short. It was 3rd and 3 yesterday. It was 3rd and 7 the other day. And you have a pass where it's a difficult situation for the 49ers to convert. On the second drive in move the ball, what has Kyle Shanahan done with the first team offense? Run, get that first down, and then start moving the ball. And so to me, I think that second way is the best way for the 49ers to have sustained success, because clearly right now their running game is much more fluent and much more efficient than their passing offense right now. And at least to get the chains moving first, you kind of want to run the ball first. And it's not like the 49ers defense didn't know what was coming. It was 3 consecutive runs in a row on one of them. And the 49ers got good gains on all 3 yards. It was a first down run, then a second and medium, a first down there, then another run, and it was a second and medium again. And so to me, I'm like, the 49ers offense clearly moves the ball better when they continuously run the football. You don't go away from that strategy. And I think that that's what Kyle Shanahan's going to tend to when the 49ers start real game situations. You might see it a little more in the preseason, but more so in the regular season, because when you move the ball with the run, the defense has to first try and stop the run, which then sets up what is Kyle Shanahan's bread and butter? That play action alongside Trey Lance. And that starts to just get it moving. I think that that's the most efficient way. 49ers have shown that they can do it. It's just they haven't done that consistently. And in my opinion, I don't blame Lance as much on that. It's just they're trying different sets.
No, everything you just said right now is I agree with it. When they've been successful and they've moved the ball, it's been with the run to start it off with, and then they use the pass. It's like you talked about, like the one. Let's go back to Saturday.
Yeah.
And the first long drive that Trey Lance had, right?
Yeah.
They start off with a couple of runs by Tyrion Davis-Price that picks up 5 yards, gives them the 3rd and 5. Really nice ball from Lance to pick up the first down. And then then they go right back to the run on first down, run on second down, pick up another first down. Now you got the defense. So they've run the ball on 4 of the first 5 plays. Now play action, hit Deebo Samuel over the middle for 19. They only gave him 19, but I think it would have been a much longer gain if they just let the play go on. And so you're right on. And that's the same thing they did yesterday, right? When they got the first down, the one first down they got was because they ran the ball 3 times in a row. They did the run to the outside to the left with Mitchell, the Lance run, and then on 3rd and 1, the little inside, run
the inside zone to juice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that little inside trap play that they like to run with them. It's a quick trap, kind of little hitter. And then, and then they tried to throw the ball and things kind of fell apart on them right there. But let me ask you how you saw this play from yesterday really quick, because I'm on the field. You're up in the stands a little bit, so you have a little bit better view than me, quite frankly, on some of the stuff. The ball to Ayuk on the hit by Ward, did that look high to you? Didn't he leave his feet a little bit to have to get that? Because it wasn't in his chest. It was high, correct?
I thought it was a little high. I thought, yes, if he had not jumped, he would have probably had to outstretch his hands. The only thing is, I thought in a way, I mean, you can see that ball as you weigh. I thought in a way, Lance felt Ayuk might have been a little more comfortable if he was in the air or not in the air, but if he was more positioned on the catch point rather than, and that might have been in that position. To me, on that ball, I thought Lance should have done one of 2 things. Throw the ball either immediately as Ayuk is coming out of the break, because Jimmy Ward was positioned in the middle of Ayuk and the sideline. So if you throw the ball before, you get to fit that ball in with Lance's arm strength before Jimmy Ward is able to apply a hit. Or if you can somehow extend the play and throw it after Ayuk, because Jimmy Ward is stationary. If Ayuk continues running a crossing route, he's going to outrun Jimmy Ward on that play. If you extend the play and then throw it near the sideline, I thought that those were the 2 best plays to complete that pass. Instead, he kind of threw it maybe a second late, more than I anticipated, leaving Ayuk in the obviously in the vicinity of Jimmy Ward, who then lays the boom. I think if that's a different safety, you might get a different result, because Ayuk has shown that against smaller players, which are normally the guys in the back end, he's been able to make contested catches. But against Jimmy Ward, with his physicality and his vision and mental capacity to understand where that ball is unfolding, seeing Lance's eyes and seeing where the receiver is, that, in my opinion, was a great defensive play that knocked the ball out.
Yeah, no, it was a great defensive play by Jimmy Ward. And the only thing I would say about the throw is if it's lower, just the way that the play unfolded. If that ball's not high, if that ball is between the shoulders and down, I think it's a completion, because I think that ball's going into the framework of his body, which makes it easier for him to get hit. He's kind of falling over the ball at that point. If it's in between his shoulders and down, right? It's not, his hands aren't extended, so he's able to catch it here
because he can utilize his body to make the catch in addition to his surefire hands. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, correct. That's the only, and so that's the negative piece on that one. And then the interception was a bad one.
The interception was interesting. The read that I had on that play. So you had Tyler Kroft, who had played a lot with the ones, crossing over. I thought the pass was intended for Kroft. And I think if that's George Kittle, it is an interception. It is not an interception. And here's why. Kroft had understood that Fred Warner was sitting in the position that Warner was sitting. And Kroft, instead of running that route to the sideline, Kroft sat where he is. Lance didn't anticipate Kroft sitting there. He threw the ball as if Kroft was going to continue running, and it went straight to Fred Warner. I think even if Kroft continues to run, it's an interception because Warner's in better position. But if that's Kittle, I think you could see Lance trusting his tight end when he's stationary and hitting Kittle right there. But that's my read on the situation. I think it's just him not being in connection with his tight end, but also him making a poor read because that was an ugly throw. If you because Fred Warner didn't move for about 5 seconds. He was just standing there, just awaiting Lance's eyes as a robber, and Lance threw it right to him.
Yeah, and we've seen 6 picks. When we look, when you look at the 6 interceptions, one of the things that I keep hearing about, and I do understand the need in training camp to test the defense or test your arm, test your limit, see what you can do, see what you can get away with, and those kind of things. Let me ask you this question: when you see the 6, when you go back in your mind and you think about what happened on those 6 interceptions, is there any of those 6 that you think that you can look and you're saying that's a situation where it's an interception, but he's testing the defense?
That's a good question because I know the first 2 were another similar to the 6th in that it was straight to a defender on a throw that was behind receivers, straight in the middle of the field where a linebacker would be. The first to Warner, the second to Ward, the third was to Hufanga, and then
he has the two where he's moving and he's trying to.
The one was the red zone one, right, where Charvarius intercepted it. And then what was the 5th one, or what was the one that I'm missing?
The Ward pick 6 where they bring 0 and he's pressured and he dumps it out late.
So your answer to that question is no. He's not testing the defense on either of them. All 6 were mental mistakes in a way where I don't think they were good throws on all 6 of those. That's an interesting observation.
That's the only thing for me, and I understand because that's, and this is going back to like responding to what you're hearing from the fans who some are there, some aren't, whatever. But I totally understand the need to test things that you practice as a time to try to do things that maybe you're not going to be able to work out. And it's okay. The interceptions that we're talking about aren't situations like that. And it's interesting. And I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to get into the quarterback that he's replacing. I don't want to have that conversation. But, when you get into when you get into camp with Lance, I think right now so far, I think what you started this discussion off with is right. It's just been inconsistent. And Jordan, Elliott, who's been at all the practices, he put out a tweet today about how it's not so much the accuracy, but it's the inconsistency. And I kind of responded, well, the difference between the good quarterbacks and the great quarterbacks or the bad quarterbacks are the ability to be consistently accurate. And so when we're talking about these things, I think it is a situation where he can be accurate. He can be nailed.
Right, because you see the throws that are just on the money, and they're difficult throws where when you talk about the last quarterback, if we're being honest, some of those throws our last quarterback would not attempt. But then again, you do see the inconsistencies, and it's not on it. Sometimes the inconsistencies don't come with difficult throws. We mentioned the 6 interceptions. We mentioned the out routes, which are about 10 to 15 yard out routes where he's throwing wide. We've mentioned the deep misses and things like that. There are inconsistencies where you can definitely see the good, but you also see where he kind of needs improvement. And I'm not I've been a Lance supporter in a way in my personal. I don't ever put the personal into the reporting, but I've been high on Lance since I scouted him in the draft. And I still think it's not that I do think that he's going to be a top quarterback in this league at some point in his career. But there are inconsistencies where the one thing that I've seen that needs to be addressed is patience. You need to realize the importance of patience. And the one thing that I keep continuing to point out, back in 2019, the 49ers didn't have an aerial passing attack despite going 8-1 in their first 9 games. Jimmy Garoppolo, coming off the ACL injury, getting reacclimated into an offense that acquired new pieces like the Emmanuel Sanders midseason acquisition, like Deebo Samuel, and the new pieces that he was around, because that was the year the 49ers really transformed their roster for the better. That offseason heading into 2019, coming off a 4-12 season. When you talk about that year, Garoppolo was getting acclimated into the offense over the first half of the season. He only threw for 229 yards for the first 9 games, 14 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and yet the 49ers went 8-1 in that stretch. Why?
Mhm.
Because the foundation of this team has always been a strong elite defense matched with a powerful running game, which has been catalyzed by a strong offensive line, specifically at the tackles. So to me, the thing is, Trey Lance is going to be inconsistent. But the main reason that I'm not particularly worried about the 49ers is because that inconsistency doesn't necessarily have to thwart the 49ers. It's just one thing we've seen his teammates say is, as long as you don't make any poor game decision plays that impact the outcome of the game, meaning an interception where it's on a poor read that can maybe change the outcome of the game. As long as those decisions don't necessarily come into fold, I still think the 49ers are going to have a successful season where they can, like Garoppolo over that last portion of the 2019 season, get Trey Lance much more acclimated, where his ceiling, which has been the big part about the talk around Trey Lance since the day he was drafted, can truly come into fold when the 49ers get into their most important games.
Yeah, I really like what you said there as far as the importance of him not making this mistake, and how we've heard the defensive players and some of his offensive teammates saying, just play within yourself. Don't make any stupid things. Let us all help you out to succeed. And I really like that. And I've said repeatedly throughout the offseason, I feel like this is a roster that can win a lot of games. And it's up to the quarterback to not win games for him necessarily, but don't be the guy that loses it for him, right? Because if you go and you look at Kyle Shanahan's record, everybody likes to talk about Kyle Shanahan's record and how many games he won with Jimmy Garoppolo compared to the games that he lost. When they didn't win when Garoppolo wasn't there. Well, the problem is that when Garoppolo's not there, the guys that they have playing quarterback just aren't starting level quarterbacks in the NFL. That's just the way it is. And that team in 2020, even with all the injuries everywhere, that's a playoff team if you don't have Nick Mullins throwing pick sixes and fumbling the ball for touchdowns and those kind of things, and costing them at least 3 or 4 games that season. And
Right.
So if Trey Lance just goes out there, plays within himself, makes the plays that are there to be made, does what I think Steve Young nailed it, hit it the best when he was on with Larry Krueger and Damon Bruce
Right,
on
on
95.7 The Game.
Yeah.
He was talking about a lot of different things, and he talked about how we know that Trey Lance is going to be explosive.
Correct.
Can Trey Lance be a game manager? And I think that it was towards the end of that interview, a lot of people didn't really pay attention to it, but that's something that I picked up on, because I agree he's going to be an explosive player. It's the game manager piece, and we'll see how that plays out. When we get to September 11th, week 1, that's when we'll find out. We're not going to really see that right in training camp as much or during preseason.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to see with Trey Lance, explosive, we've definitely seen it, like you said. Game manager, that's something that hopefully comes kind of – and game manager in this instance at least is not a bad claim. By that, it was kind of, in a way, going to what I was saying is, can you not throw the game away with certain plays while allowing yourself to grow in games and the rest of your team, as I mentioned, carry this team to wins? But to me, the one thing with Trey Lance that I've seen in certain instances, going back to the inconsistency, on certain instances, what I've seen where he, in my opinion, is the most dangerous is when he's truly comfortable and not hesitating. Yeah. Trey Lance has an innate ability with those legs. His ability to run is it's just unmatched compared to certain quarterbacks in the NFL. However, one thing I noticed on certain practices this year compared to last year when I'm watching his game film, he looks faster at times this year. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean he's necessarily just grown an extra gear of speed. Trey Lance at times this year hasn't hesitated when he's taking off. Last year, he wanted to stay in the pocket. Even when he was rolling out, there were plays where he sometimes hesitated, which then in a way slowed him down. And that's sometimes you saw that a lot, especially in his first start against the Arizona Cardinals. And then you sometimes saw that as well on some of the shorter runs against the Houston Texans. This year, though, when Lance takes off, you can truly witness the speed that Lance has. And that's something that I hope continues. Don't hesitate on throws. Don't hesitate on plays. If a throw is not there and you have a running lane, go. Just I like that's where you don't necessarily see it enough in practice because, like we said earlier, you're trying to test everything out. You're trying to see what works and what doesn't work. You're trying to see and get acclimated with receivers, which is the most important part for a quarterback in practice. But at come game time, that's something I want to see from Lance. Can he truly be comfortable enough to utilize the entirety of his skill set so that not one one part isn't necessarily hindered because he's trying to overthink the decision and make a game-saving play?
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I'm going to answer that. I'm going to respond to that too. Tony, thank you very much for becoming a member of the channel. Really appreciate it. I want to hit that up really quick before because we've kind of got a lot more comments over there in the comment section. I wanted
Hey, shout out to the comment section.
That's right. But I and to your point about the speed of Trey Lance, I think I saw it last year. Is that when Trey Lance is running on a scramble, he is much faster than when he's running on a designed run. When he is at his best with his legs when it's off of a pass that he's deciding that he's going to run. And we've seen it in camp a couple of times. In that one practice, he had back-to-back times down the left side line.
Yeah.
But kind of like you were saying too, in terms of Trey Lance playing free and doing what comes natural to him. Just that 2-minute drill that he ran on Saturday. I mean, that 2-minute drill that he ran was near perfection. If his pass to
Hasty was just not a little high.
Yeah, if that pass isn't high and he catches it and takes it out of bounds, and they just keep, and that's whatever, and everything else continues the same way, you could say that was a perfect 2-minute drill drive. I was asked this yesterday on Twitter, and it's really hard. You don't have enough space to answer some of the questions on Twitter, but because there's just too much it's not enough space to really answer, and you don't want to be writing 5 tweets to answer somebody's question. But they were asking me something like, how does he compare to Jimmy Garoppolo in the 2-minute drill, whatever, kind of something like that. And I'll say that 2-minute drill that we saw him run on Saturday, was everything that I did not see from Trey Lance last year. It was so much more smooth than what we saw. Because when we were in training camp last year, I remember them running one day in particular, they're doing 2-minute drill. It was on the field closer to the fans. And Jimmy Garoppolo led a drive where it was just right down the field, touchdown. Trey Lance got a touchdown too, but it was kind of fits. And then it was not just struggling, third down, make a big play, struggle, get a first down, then the touchdown throw. But that one yesterday or Saturday was so smooth, just everything about it. The touchdown throw, what I liked about the touchdown throw too, just for a second, was, he's asked about it afterwards in the press conference, was, on that throw, did you think about, was there ever a time that you were going to take off running? And, he politely laughed in his head, I think, because it's a situation where he understands the game situation. 6 seconds left. This is what he said. It's the end of the game. They're all on the line of scrimmage. There's no way I'm going to get into the end zone. So I've got to get the ball there with his arm. And he realizes that. And you saw him do that on the field as he's making the play. They got the pressure. He steps up. He knows he can't cross the line. So he's sliding across the line. And then he finds his receiver and he drills it in for a touchdown. That's the thing that there's a misconception when it comes to Trey Lance. The misconception when it comes to Trey Lance is that he is a running quarterback. Trey Lance is a quarterback.
He's a pocket passer.
He is a pocket passer
who just has the ability to run.
Absolutely. And so I know that I'm generally considered the anti-whatever because I was not – last year I wasn't saying that – at this time last year I was not saying that Trey Lance should be the starting quarterback. There's a big piece of the 49ers Twitter who doesn't like nuance. Jack? And so they get frustrated.
I'm a Trey Lance supporter. And I actually – my first piece of last year was I believe the 49ers quarterback plan should be what it ended up being. Garoppolo for 2021, allowing Lance to sit, just because I had heard tidbits from his coaches, and just from what I saw, I thought the 49ers quarterback plan honestly just worked for 2021. This is what I meant by that was last year, just looking at the schedule, there wasn't really, in my opinion, an instance that you could slide him in during the season and have him have a nice adjustment period because the bye week was too early. If it was a week 9 or week 10 bye week, if the bye week was right before the Jacksonville game, I would have been a lot more comfortable. However, the bye week was week 6. Going after that, you face one of the strongest defenses in the NFL at home against the Colts before having a tough stretch where you go, like you had the Bears there, but you faced the 7-1 Cardinals. You faced the Rams, and you had a tough stretch there. So in my opinion, the one instance where I would have started Trey Lance was week 1, because that would be the most, that would have been the easiest way for him to get acclimated to the NFL environment, given the easier part of the schedule. And this was just schedule semantics in a way also, but I also thought that would not have been the best situation for him to start specifically week 1. I'm not saying the 49ers wouldn't have made the playoffs if that was the case, just because of what we've outlined today. But that's why I kind of believe that the 49ers quarterback plan should have been what it was today.
Yeah, I think it worked out. It worked out nearly perfect for the 49ers in that Lance got to play in the middle of the season against a really good defense in a game that they should have won, that I think that wasn't his fault that they lost.
Yeah.
He got to play. He got to play in a game at the end of the year that was a must win, to keep you in the playoff race. And on top of that, he got to sit and watch. He got to learn everything that it takes to be a quarterback in the NFL. By around the middle to end of the season, he started becoming a regular in the press conferences every week. And I think that was a little bit of the gamemanship as to who's going to start and whatnot. But I think going through that process helps him out as well in terms of being able to understand what it's like to talk to the media and become a little more comfortable with that. And we've seen him be much more comfortable in that role this season. I really like it. I was even at the point at the end of the year with the way that he played in week 17. If Garoppolo hadn't played in week 18, I wouldn't have argued about it. I wouldn't have said that this is a mistake. I would have just rolled with it because I felt like he played. Did they win that game against the Rams? I don't know, but I don't know if he loses. In some ways, I feel like if Trey Lance was
if you go with Lance in 16, 17, you just continue with him onwards from there. Or you played him in 17. If you go with them in 18, you continue with them, but. They continued back. And the other big information that nobody really realized, or really is continuing to realize, he told the media that he suffered that finger injury for the entirety of last season and only fully got healed in February of the offseason when he started training in Los Angeles this year. That's another thing. Maybe the 49ers knew that and didn't want to jeopardize, even if it jeopardized Garoppolo's health even more, given he was coming off injury as well. That's another thing. I would not want to at least sacrifice my franchise investment for just one game if it was going to make it even worse and have him require extra surgery or whatever it was towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's the whole way that everything played out, just really, really interesting, and it worked out well for the 49ers. Definitely. And I like what Lee came up with a really good one over here. He says that Trey Lance is a game manager with benefits. We'll just leave it at that. That's a really good one. I got some fun people in my comment section. That was a good one. I even got a guy over here who's like super. I don't know why he's in the comment section. He should be out on the beach, but he likes the show. He's part of the Baywatch crew over there, and I like that guy. He's one of my favorites. He likes to really talk to me quite a bit in these shows. It's fun. Let's just get off of the quarterback. Then we spent 40 minutes talking about Trey Lance. That was fun. I actually do. This was a good conversation, and I enjoy it because we're able to have a free flowing discussion about the positives and negatives. It's not a back and forth where we're yelling at each other. I'm not telling you you're full of shit. So that's always fun. Off of the quarterbacks, take a look at the running backs. What are you seeing in the running back room?
First observation, in my opinion, is that Elijah Mitchell is a clear-cut running back 1. Mm-hmm. And what I'm seeing from the carry distribution, you see everybody else get sprinkled in with the ones at times. I've seen Davis Price get carries with the ones. I've seen Sermon get carries with the ones. I've seen Wilson get carries with the ones. But the one consistent thing that I've seen with these running backs is that they've all also got time with the 2s and sometimes even the 3s. There's only one player who's only gotten time with the 1s, and that's Elijah Mitchell. And you also see that during the game plan. And so I don't think it's going to be a heavy usage towards Elijah Mitchell for 2 reasons. I think he could be utilized more as a third down back than people realize, given the lack of an apparent option right now in the backfield as a receiver. And I also think, given last year, you don't want him healthy for only 10 games. You need him healthy for a 17-game period, especially down the stretch if you want, or especially if if you're going to continue Trey Lance's development and try and make it as successful as possible, I think Elijah Mitchell needs to be in the fold every single week. So to me, I think it's not going to be a heavy workload. I don't think it's going to be a 20 carry a game kind of year for Elijah Mitchell, because I don't think he'll remain durable if that's the case. But if you get him 12 to 15 carries and then maybe scale it down on certain days, I wouldn't mind that, because I think he can be efficient at that. And my second observation, I think this year is going to be the year like 2019 where Kyle Shanahan honestly just rides with the hot hand. There have been times where you see the same player get 3 carries in a row, despite the 49ers liking to rotate these guys and seeing who can get who gets the run and seeing who gets plays. And especially in the game situations, there was a time with the second team offense, I believe on Saturday, Jeff Wilson started it, got 3 straight runs in a row because he was successful in all 3 straight runs. And then TDP got 3 straight runs in a row. And so to me, I honestly think the 49ers might be riding the hot hand, especially because they have such a diverse running back room. You have a guy who excels with power in TDP, who also has some acceleration. You also have a guy in Trey Sermon whose best ability is that one cut run downfield, and he also has some speed to him as well. And then you have Elijah Mitchell, who best services, in my opinion at least, is an outside zone guy, because I think his vision is somewhat improved, and I also think he's got the most speed on the team, pure speed that is, to be able to get to the outside, whereas some other runners have struggled at times.
Yeah. No, I like everything you said. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you who I think the 4 that make the roster. You tell me who you disagree with, if there's one that you disagree with, because I like what you said, because you're right. We saw on Saturday, you saw Jeff Wilson, those first 3 carries, move the ball for the second unit. We saw TDP do that right after with the ones. Yeah. That's really solid. When I look at the way the 49ers running back room sits up, I think you're right. Elijah Mitchell's number 1. Whoever you've got at number 2, I think right now, I
don't think it matters that much. Yeah.
No, but I think Davis Price is starting to really start to solidify himself in that in the offense. He's Elijah Mitchell. I don't remember Elijah Mitchell ever getting reps with the ones until I think after towards the end of training camp, after the fans were gone. So to see Davis Price getting those reps with the ones,
you might see it. Yeah. I think 18 practices, honestly, real quick, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think those 18 practices, honestly, or how many ever it'll be, are going to be the most telling ones, because that's where I think a lot of the play action implementation is going to come through, because Kyle Shanahan doesn't really like putting his playbook out for everybody to see. I think that's where it's going to come. Maybe you see a lot of this, a lot of TDP action as well, especially because he had a slow start to camp, and now he's blossoming over the last couple of practices for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. So the way that I have it is Mitchell 1, Davis Price, Sermon, and I think the 4th one has been the question mark is who out of Wilson and Hasty and
Jordan Mason,
the undrafted rookie free agent. I think it's good. I think that I would go with Jeff Wilson Jr. as the 4th, because of the versatility that he brings, because he can play fullback for you in a pinch if you have to. He can play halfback. He's a good receiver, catches the ball well, can play special teams for you. So it's all that versatility, and he kind of fits the mold that you have. And he looks really healthy right now too.
That's true. He honestly looks slow, in my opinion, in the first week. He's picked it up a little bit, and I think his main calling card, at least this year, more so than other years like pre-injury, is going to be his vision. While he has, in my opinion, lost a little bit of a step, coming obviously post-injury from the torn Achilles that thwarted him last year, I think his vision is key, and his cutting ability also seems nice. Obviously, we saw the play where he juked Taylor Hawkins and had that long run on Sunday. And I think the fourth spot is truly going to be a battle. And I think it is between 2 people. And the reason is, the 49ers right now have a struggle with that third down back. I think that third down back, there isn't a solidified one, because Elijah Mitchell has dropped a pass in training camp. Tyrion Davis-Price hasn't ever had surefire hands, didn't in LSU, has dropped a pass as well. When you talk about who's the other guy, Trey Sermon dropped a pass in one-on-ones on Saturday, and then also dropped another pass earlier in the week. And then JaMychal Hasty, he's a smaller receiver or smaller running back. He's had 2 passes. One was a difficult one but it bounced off his chest on a catch on RB wheel against Fred Warner down the sideline over the shoulder, and it just bounced off his chest. And then another one just went off his hands. So those 4 receivers, in my opinion, or running backs, in my opinion, aren't really strong receivers, at least what we've seen from the field, from training camp specifically, and also their backgrounds. I think Mitchell out of the 4 has the best chance, given that he had 19 catches, 20 targets last year for 137 yards. And he also was featured by Lance a little bit during the starts that Lance had. But I'd be more comfortable with the receiving option, and that leaves 2. Jordan Mason, the undrafted free agent, and Jeff Wilson Jr. Now, I think the one that they cut honestly gets claimed. So it's just, which investment do you prefer? Because up there in Seattle right now, the one issue that they're struggling with is a receiving back, because they have Kenneth Walker and Rashad Penny. Both of them are not known for receiving. Rashad Penny has never been a receiver. Kenneth Walker had 13 catches during his college career. And then their third running back is DJ Dallas, who also isn't much of a receiver, at least from what I remember. Their receiving back is Travis Homer, and Jeff Wilson Jr. is an upgrade to him. Or Jordan Mason is a better investment than Travis Homer, who's a veteran now. So I think, honestly, if we're talking just about one team, Seattle would claim the other guy. I personally would go with Jordan Mason. Now, do I think that's going to happen? I'm not sure. But Jordan Mason, in my opinion, seems a little more explosive. His initial burst is the one question right now that I have. While I've seen the explosiveness, I haven't necessarily seen that initial burst. But Mason is he's been a good receiver. I think he honestly runs with a force. He's a bigger running back, and the reason that I lean towards Mason right now, Anthony Lynn, he has a more of a compassion for the power run. And we've seen it with the running backs that we've drafted. Tyrion Davis-Price, that's what his forte is. Elijah Mitchell bulked up 10 pounds. And while Trey Sermon has gotten slimmer, I think Jordan Mason fits the mold because he's a good receiver, but also can fit in should Elijah Mitchell get injured. And so to me, I think he's the guy over Jeff Wilson Jr., who's a little smaller than him, despite both having similar traits, because you get a guy under team control rather than a guy who's a free agent for the next 3 years. You can develop him given your abilities, and like given the group's ability to develop running backs. And you get a guy who might overall just be a better player right now, while he probably gets claimed by Seattle if you go.
I really like Jordan Mason. I really liked what I saw of him during OTs and mini camps. I just haven't really seen a whole lot of them, but there was one run in particular. I don't remember which day it was, but I wrote in my notes. And what I like about him, he runs with a good pad level. He's a big guy, but when he runs, he's not big. He does a really good job of getting his shoulders down, which makes him tough to tackle because there's not a lot of space there and to get him.
He's able to cut and move swiftly too.
Yes, he's very smooth, and when he makes a cut, he gets back to top speed really fast, and he's tough. So, I wouldn't complain if he's the guy that makes the roster at the the fourth guy, because I do think that he can catch the ball in the backfield. I think he can do all those things. The only negative that I've seen from him is I was watching him in the pass blocking drills the other day, and he was struggling with that. They had to put him in there a couple times extra to get a couple extra reps, and that was something where Tyrion Davis-Price, like, it was a monster. I thought him and Fred Warner were about ready to knock each other's heads off on one of their reps.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say, that was my personal opinion, not what I've seen on the field. Because when we talk about on the field, Mason has been RB5 or RB6 with limited reps, especially on the days without one-on-ones, whereas Jeff Wilson Jr. has seen time with the ones. He's seen time with the twos. He's gotten a good amount more run. It's just in the limited reps that I've seen Mason, I like what I've seen. I feel like he's an NFL-level running back, and I believe in the closed practice session, Mason might slowly start to climb up the depth chart. Will it be enough for the 49ers to let go of Jeff Wilson Jr., a guy who has a full grasp of their system and a guy who obviously, he's gotten a good amount of run so far? That's a question that is yet to be answered, but I wouldn't necessarily be disappointed if it was Jeff Wilson Jr. I just think it's better if for the 49ers now and the future if Jordan Mason ends up being there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because is Wilson a guy who can be kind of like Dante Johnson, where they can release him, but nobody's going to pick him up, so they can kind of get him onto the practice squad and bring him back and forth and all that kind of stuff, So it'll be interesting.
Actually, given that he has the over 4 years of experience.
Yeah. it'll be interesting to see how that room plays out. But let's get into the wide receivers now. The wide receiver room's kind of, we know Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk has been tearing it up. Ayuk, he looks like a different guy this year. And Kyle Shanahan's talked a little bit about that. I think when you look at Deebo Samuel, you see a receiver who's working his way back, and every once in a while he makes you can see visions of, or examples, I guess, of what he's going to be in this offense with Trey Lance. But they're just not totally in sync yet, and that's going to come.
Yeah.
Beyond that, Ray McLeod to me has been the third best receiver on the team through training camp. I think he's been much better than the others.
You're saying Ayuk and then Deebo and then him.
Yeah, Jawan Jennings has had a rough go of it.
Yeah.
There's been, Marcus Johnson and Malik Turner in that group, but that's all just, everybody else is just kind of there. We haven't really seen a whole lot out of the other receivers other than those top guys.
Yeah, this might be a surprise to fans, but honestly, I'm excluding Deebo Samuel because he hasn't practiced. But if we're talking about the top receivers so far in camp, I'd go 1 Ayuk for sure, 2 McLeod. I'd go 3. I honestly go Malik Turner over the other 2, with Jennings and Gray being 4 and 5.
Yep, that's about right. The only reason I put Samuel in there is because we know what Samuel is, right?
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. McLeod, Turner, I agree with that. Jennings has struggled. Danny Gray has struggled. Although he's turned it on a little bit over the last couple of days, we've definitely seen a change in him. Maybe that's all of us writing negative stuff about him. Maybe he likes that. Maybe that's fired him up. But no, it's been good. I have a question in the comments I want to bring up to you, and you can answer this one too. KW2421 wants to know, what kind of adjustments have you seen or expect to see from the Niners veteran wideouts with Lance starting? What do you think? Have you seen anything different from that group?
I don't know if it's necessarily the wideouts or Kyle Shanahan, because one thing, I'll just talk specifically real quick about Deebo Samuel, an adjustment that I've seen in a way. Deebo Samuel has struggled to win on go routes so far in camp. He's been locked up by Emmanuel Mosley. I know one go route during one-on-ones that he struggled to win. I know Deommodore Lenoir has been on coverage in him yesterday on the 15 out where he didn't necessarily separate as much. He struggled to separate at times and push into that second gear, getting back in the football rust. So what has Kyle Shanahan done? Instead of having Deebo Samuel primarily run these go routes where he hasn't been able to get a completion, he's had him on these deep crossers that Deebo Samuel excelled at last year. That's where a lot of Deebo Samuel yards after the catch came. And so you've seen a couple of 20 yards, 25-yard Deebo Samuel completions from Trey Lance or from Nate Sudfeld, where Samuel, it's sometimes in soft coverage where Samuel's able to run that deep crosser. And because there's not a cornerback pressing on him, he's able to separate and showcase that he still has that second gear and then get open over the middle of the field, catch the ball, and sometimes run for an extra 5 to 10 yards after the catch.
That's the thing with Deebo Samuel. I don't care if you're sending him deep. Just get him the ball, because you get him the ball. You get him the ball, and he can do the rest with his legs. You don't necessarily need to get the ball to him 30 yards downfield or anything like that. Get him the ball in space, like you're talking about. That's one of the better throws that I've seen in camp was the throw from Lance to Deebo. I don't know what day it was, but it was an in-breaking route. But it looked like there's 3 49ers around him, and he caught it.
Right. Yeah, this was, I think, Deebo's first or second day back, and it was in a tight window too. Yeah,
that was really nice. It was a play action, right? It's play action. That's kind of there's one of the staple plays that we've seen him run over the last 5 years. It was just, and it was nice in that tight window. Deebo catches it and takes off, and Samuel's got the wheels. Just get that guy the ball. He's a playmaker. Ray brings up a really good question here, and we didn't even touch this. We were talking about running backs, and he asked this question, but we can kind of bring it down. Is this a team that, maybe instead of only keeping 4 running backs, maybe they keep an extra one, so it's 5 running backs plus Juszczyk, and then maybe instead of having 6 wide receivers, they go 5 wide receivers. Is that something that you think that might be able to do? Because, like he says, it seems like the team's going to need more running backs than receivers.
I'll say yes and no. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, can this team afford to keep 6 running backs? I don't think so. But can the team afford to keep 5 receivers? I believe so. In my opinion, there can be 5. Like, if you cut Malik Turner, then you have the 5 locks that many have talked about as being locks in a way on the roster. And that's Samuel, Ayuk, Jennings, McLeod, and Danny Gray. The reason that I say that 5 receivers, in my opinion, could be a possibility is because the 49ers have an offensive line debacle. Last year, the 49ers didn't carry a center, a backup center, that is, to Alex Mack. Instead, they had Jake Brendel on the practice squad every single game and elevated him. So they carried 8 offensive linemen last year. Colton McKivitz, I believe, was also a practice squad guy who was elevated on certain games. This year, though, I think the 49ers might want to carry 9 offensive linemen. First of all, Jalen Moore is going to have to go on IR originally. And so you might need some extra depth on that original roster if you want to not lose another guy, because Colton McKivitz, Jason Poe, these are guys, in my opinion, that could fight for a roster spot. And right now, I think there are 10 offensive linemen that could potentially fight for a roster spot with the 49ers. Additionally, if Jake Brendel, like right now, is presumably the starting center, ends up winning the job, you're not going to cut Daniel Brunskill, in my opinion, because Jake Brendel, what do you call it? Like, if he's the starter, then Brunskill is a valuable backup because he can play at all 3 positions and is shown to do it. And real quick, talking about Jalen Moore, I haven't necessarily heard that he's going to go on IR. I'm just potentially assuming that he's going to go on IR, just to clarify for all of you guys, because he is suffering time with the lower leg strain. And if he isn't 100% coming into the regular season, you might want to get an extra offensive lineman. But the 49ers have more offensive line depth this year than last year, might want to carry an extra center and have interesting options like Jason Poe, who I personally think could make the 53-man roster, because after a struggling week in week 1, he has bounced back in week 2, in my opinion, has done well in one-on-ones, and also has the most important thing, the seal of approval from left tackle Trent Williams, who he worked out with this offseason. So I could think the 49ers could carry 9 offensive linemen, especially after seeing some offensive line injuries last year, and with the primary goal of this year to be to protect Trey Lance, especially with so many younger players that are kind of locks in a way to make the roster.
Yeah, no, that's really good, because your 5 wide receivers, that would be who I would say. I'm in agreement with you, and I think it makes it hard to, I think they're going to carry an extra offensive lineman as well because of all the rookies they brought in.
Yeah.
All those kind of things, and I don't know who they can bring up and all that kind of stuff, or how much of that they're going to want to do. It doesn't seem like McKivitz and School are guys that anybody's also going to want to pick up. So those could always be guys that they end up releasing, and then they played that game with them of bringing them up and down and all that kind of stuff. But that's a really interesting discussion that you're getting into there, because that offensive line group, and I'm going to transition to it right now, but that offensive line group in particular is interesting. It's a really interesting group, and I agree with you. You mentioned Jason Poe. Jason Poe, from when I saw him in rookie minicamp, the first day that we got to get in there and watch him, to where he is now, it's night and day. And that's one of the things I remember talking about it afterwards and saying, that this is what he looked like. But at the same time, he's just getting feet underneath him, and this is his first day in the NFL, and he's an undrafted free agent, and he's just trying to figure out where he's supposed to go and all that kind of stuff, because he looked like he was out of place a little bit. Mm-hmm. He doesn't look like he's out of place anymore. He looks like a guy that's gotten comfortable with where he is. And I agree with you. The one-on-one reps that he's had have been solid. There was one, I don't know if you saw it, but the one where he put the guy on his back, that was a good one. But even more so than the one-on-one reps, those are one thing that don't really tell you a whole lot of the story about him. But the reps that he's gotten during teams, he's gotten better and better in the 11-on-11 in terms of what he's been doing at guard. And I think I saw him play with the 2s and the 3s, and he's playing on the left and the right side. So maybe he makes the roster, and a guy like Nick Zakelj doesn't.
That could be the case. That is a name that I was going to mention right now after this. The reason that I'm a little more optimistic right now about Jason Poe and not so much about Nick Zakelj, I personally still think Zakelj makes the roster because the 49ers, in my opinion, potentially want to groom him to play center in 23, or maybe even the guard spot in 23, because there might be an extra opening if Spencer Burford moves to tackle to replace Mike McGlinchey. Again, it's a bunch of what ifs, but I think that Zakelj could make the roster. But Jason Poe has been a guy who stood out because while Zakelj was relegated to the 3rd team offensive line, with Keaton Sutherland kind of being put in his place at right guard this past week after playing a lot with the 2nd team originally, and also being in the 2nd team during OTAs, Zakelj's performance hasn't necessarily been that good. But Jason Poe, on the other hand, has been a mainstay with that 2nd team offensive line, in the second week, at least throughout closer to the end of the week. He's played after, like you said, after switching around a lot. I've seen him at right guard, I've seen him at left guard, I've seen him with the second and third. It seems like his calling right now is that left guard spot, right next to Sam Schluter or whoever they place at left tackle with that second team. So right now, I am being a lot more optimistic about Jason Poe than I originally was when I came into camp and saw that he was probably the smallest offensive lineman I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, no, he's definitely small, but he's stronger than heck. And, football is all about leverage. So I get wanting, I get there might be some areas where his height is going to give him some difficulty. But one thing you're not going to do is you're not going to get lower than Jason Poe because he's already lower than you to start off with.
Exactly.
It's not like, we're going to get, when we get to the defensive line, we'll talk about Javon Kinlaw and his need to get his pad level down. That's not an issue so much with Jason Poe. Jason Poe standing up already has his pads lower than Javon Kinlaw. So that's not an issue there. I want to hit this one first because I want to answer this one myself. Start off with go. But Jay Jaguayos, he says, sorry it took us so long to get to this question, by the way, but really appreciate you the super chat. He asks, it's early, but is Spencer Burford the real deal? And Aguayo, absolutely. I love Spencer Burford. I've loved him since the first time I saw him on the field in terms of what I see from him. Go back to at training camp, it's hard to really hear things because it's just so loud because of the music they're pumping in. During minicamp, during the rookie minicamp and the OTAs also, they don't have the music quite so loud. And I spent a lot of time over by the offensive line watching him. And one of the things that I can tell you about Spencer Burford compared to especially all the other rookies that were there was that when Spencer Burford hit people, it sounded like I was at a boxing match. You could hear. I've never been to a boxing match, so it's what I would envision it would sound like when a guy gets punched in the face. But that's what Spencer Burford's hands sounded like every time he hit the guy. And it wasn't full speed. It's just, working on their techniques, right? And he hasn't done anything at all that's made me think that he's not a guy that can be a long-term player for the 49ers. You watch this guy in the one-on-one pass reps. Mm-hmm. He is so smooth for a rookie. Everything that he does, it's smooth. He's got patience. He's not rushing to get to guys. It's just he's letting them come to him, and then that guy gets close enough, and he whaps them with his strong hands, like I just talked about. And then he's got, he has a really good base. So again, all that stuff plays together, right? I can't do it because I'm sitting here and I'm dressed up and everything. But it's just he's just in a nice, solid position. He's patient. The guy gets into him, and he's really good there. He's working on things. He's learning in the NFL. He's going to get beat at times, but I think for a rookie 10 days into training camp, he's ahead of where you would think he'd be. I
think he's the real deal. I mean, I honestly do. This guy, he's so strong as it is, and I still think he can even grow into his frame a little more. A lot of people coming out of out of the draft said this is our next mini Trent. And I see a question in the chat, and I honestly think it could be true, where you might see Trent Williams and Spencer Burford be the tackles of the future for the 49ers. The 49ers obviously have Mike McGlinchey coming on the edge, and this is something I talked with my co-host Marco Martinez, and he was kind of telling me I could envision a scenario where Spencer Burford spends the year at guard, something we've seen a little more in the NFL. I'll point to a situation, and it's just one, but I've seen it a couple of times as well. One example, Alex Leatherwood last year with the Las Vegas Raiders struggled significantly at tackle when they first threw him in there, but then played well at guard, and then now is kicking back to tackle. Something we might see a little more in the NFL are players starting at guard and then kicking out to tackle as they grow into their frame. And I don't think it's not always the best it's not always the best scenario for success, but I think in Spencer Burford's case, this could be the truth. But regardless, if he's a guard or a tackle right now, in my opinion, he's obviously going to have growing pains in his rookie year. He's going to be a little inconsistent, but I think the potential is there, and he looks like the real deal for sure.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and that was something that I thought early on in the offseason after the draft and during OTAs and minicamp was that you would see Burford kind of be that. Ooh, that was bad. The right tackle of the future. The right tackle of the. Wow, that was good. The right tackle of the future. But at the same time, if he was the right tackle of the future, don't you think that they wouldn't be running Jalen Moore out there quite as much as they are. That's what's got me wondering about it a little bit, is just because
Right.
with McGlinchey, missing practice and so much, don't you think if they really thought that he was going to be the long-term guy at right tackle, that he would be there instead?
It could be the case. That's why I'm if we're being honest, I'm a little confused with the 49ers with this offensive line scenario. We saw in minicamp overall, like we saw in minicamp how Daniel Brunskill, right? Like many envisioned he might compete at right guard with Jalen Moore. And then not only do you not see that, neither player got a single rep at right guard this entire time. So
Yeah.
Daniel Brunskill obviously being at center, Jalen Moore now being a swing tackle in a way after probably being positioned to compete at guard during training camp. So to me, I don't necessarily take too much out of it, but that is a good observation. We'll see. Maybe I don't think obviously he's not going to get a single rep now, but we'll see next year as they progress, because that could be a thing going forward.
Yeah, no, I'm not laughing at you either. I'm still laughing at myself for burping live on the air without hitting the mute button first. But no, and like Ray says, he says, it's hard to tell what's going to happen in the future, but there's lots of different ways that this thing can go. And I like Burford, and the deal with Moore, I thought it was going to be, if Brunskill slid inside, it was going to be Moore and Burford fighting it out there, and that hasn't happened at all. And
No.
the other thing, and quite frankly, I feel like they're better off with Colton McKivitz playing tackle than Jalen Moore.
100%. Moore is just not a tackle. It's unfortunate. Like I've made the claim for him to be a guard since he was drafted. I thought he'd eventually switch there, but maybe he. I don't know. I wasn't there at minicamp. Maybe you can enlighten me. But he just doesn't look that good at tackle. And in a way, his performance has been bolstered up by Justin Skule's poor performance over the first week as well at tackle, and now Moore's injured. McKivitz is a much better right tackle than Jalen Moore. I thought he didn't hold up as much on the left side. I think he's a better right tackle than left, but McKivitz is a better swing tackle.
I think McKivitz is better on both ends. He's better than he's better than Moore. I think he's better than Skule. I think he's a solid player. He's not going. He's not great. He's not great. He's a low level starter, high level backup is what he is. But he's perfect for what you want. And I think what they're doing. Here's what the other thing I'm going to kind of throw out there is what I think is going to happen here. I think Daniel Brunskill, because the 49ers, they sent Jake Brendel to the podium yesterday. I don't think you send the backup center to the podium.
Yeah.
I think that what we're going to see here is we're going to see Daniel Brunskill be the sixth man, and he's going to slide along the offensive line and play everywhere.
I thought you were about to drop a bomb and say Daniel Brunskill was going to get cut, and I was going to be like, whoa.
Maybe. I don't think he's going to get cut because he's too valuable, because he can play everywhere.
He's not versatile. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's in the last year of his contract too.
Yeah, sorry. And I honestly think, like you said, sixth man, that's a perfect thing, because in a way, even if Daniel Brunskill might be a better man, first of all, it's unfortunate that he just can't snap consistently. That's a big thing. And you can touch on that in a minute. But like, in a way, even if he might be slightly better than Brendel overall, I think his value just to cross over all of the offensive line positions services him better, because we're bound to have at least one injury at a position that gets the most bang in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he can go in, and he could, because he's played left tackle, right? Did he play left tackle back in 2019 when for a period there and stuff? So I think he's a guy that is best suited moving around the offensive line as needed to fill in for everybody else. They're not saying that, but I think that's kind of where they're leaning, right? And I don't see why you wouldn't have him doing anything other than playing center, and really other than to push Brendel, because you really don't have anybody else there to push him. And Kyle Shanahan has said, we know what we have in Daniel Brunskill. We don't need to necessarily see him play right guard right now. So it's interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how that group comes together, because that is the one spot that I think that we don't know what's going to happen. I think everywhere else we have a pretty good idea at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think like for those questioning about the offensive line, I think 4 spots are solidified. I think Banks for sure is solidified. Burford now definitely is solidified. And the 2 tackle spots, they're definitely solidified. So center is the one place. I forget what day it was. It was the last off day that the 49ers had, where you saw Chris Forster rave about Jake Brendel during that press conference, or during like a speech when he was asked by a reporter. And then you also see Kyle Shanahan, I believe, like indirectly indicate that Brunskill is projected as the starter or something like that. And so you kind of get these tidbits. And it's also like, you maybe one thing I floated out there. I wasn't really thinking this is a like reality or anything, but like Chris Forster was the guy who has consistently wanted Jake Brendel there, right? He was with him in Miami, started him in Miami before Brendel got injured in 2018, then after, brought Brendel back here as the backup in 2020 when he came. Brendel opted out of the COVID year. Then he brought him back in 21 and now is positioning him to be the starter in 22. And the one thing I said is, there's somebody else on that coaching staff, maybe even or higher up, that prefers Brunskill, hence why we're seeing this battle and not seeing a battle at any of the other positions.
Yeah, and I think they really like Banks. I think those other four have always, well, not always the other four. I think 3 of the 5 have always been solidified.
Yeah.
In the minds of the 49ers. They knew that there was going to be Williams and McClinchy and Banks. I think Banks, they knew that. And in their head, I think they felt comfortable with either Brendel or Brunskill, whoever that was going to be. And it was a matter of kind of starting to see how guys play out. And I think that Burford stepped in and just really showed them a lot. Do you have time to go over some defense?
Oh, I don't know if you saw the text. I have no restrictions at all. We're solid.
Perfect. So let's get into the defense. I don't know, on the defensive line, is there anything really that surprised you about the defensive line to this point?
Surprised. There are a couple of things, although I don't know if it should be seen as a surprise. I'm surprised at the amount of run Kerry Hyder has gotten. He's seen a lot of time with the ones, be it on the end, be it on in the interior. I honestly thought Kerry Hyder could be a potential cut candidate just because there might be more talented players, but 49ers seem to like him a lot. He seems to be more comfortable in the system. And also we heard, forget, it was either Kosaric or Ryans who said it, who they envisioned him in a way like an Arden Key type of player, a guy who can be on the interior and outside, which essentially solidified his roster spot. So I've seen, like, I'm a little surprised the amount of time he's gotten with the ones. He's kind of been the next man up with O'Menahue. The other two things, Kevin Givens, he's been a surprise. And it's not a surprise in a way because the talent has been there, but in a way you're starting to see it untapped with more of a role. I think Kevin Givens is a starting defensive lineman in the NFL. And despite his smaller frame, I think he's maybe around 290. His pass rushing ability is pretty solid. I think we've got to obviously see more to see how he holds up in the run game, but at least pass rushing wise, I think he's been pretty solid on the defensive line, and he's going to be a good third guy behind the top two, obviously, in Kinlaw and Armstead when that comes. And then the third one is Drake Jackson's utilization. We've seen a couple of reps with him on the inside. I thought he was going to project, based on what I heard outside, I thought he was going to project purely as an edge rusher. But then I also realized the combination of him right next to Nick Bosa, given their just elite traits between the two, I think that could be a formidable duo if they want to throw him inside. But I also think him on the outside would work. And right now, when we talk about Drake Jackson, I still think he's a raw product, which is just showcasing the potential he has. Because when he wins, it's normally he just wins because he's able to use bend and get around the edge, right, on the outside. In one-on-one drills, he hasn't really shown out yet to me in a drill that favors defensive linemen because he doesn't have the arsenal of moves. And it's okay because he's adjusting to the position, hasn't played defensive line since his freshman year at USC. He's playing more of a linebacker role. But in my opinion, at least, his traits purely can win him reps against the ones. So I want to see how he kind of gets more and more time in those close practices.
Yeah, I like Drake Jackson. He was a guy that I was kind of harsh on with my critique of him during OTAs and minicamp and so on. But he's really stepped up, in my opinion, during training camp, and we've seen him get better. And I liked what you're talking about in terms of Drake Jackson. You know, we've seen him line up inside a couple of times, and it's interesting. I think the 49ers are trying to kind of look for they're moving guys all around. That's one of
Right.
the things you can say about the defensive line is they're trying everybody out in every spot that they can, and trying to find out what works, what doesn't, how they can mix these guys in and whatnot. And Kerry Hyder has been impressive. Kevin Givens for me has just been he stepped in, and you haven't really seen any kind of a knockdown from what you had before. So that's, he's going to be a high level guy on that second unit as well. Charles Amenahu, I think, is a guy who really does a really good job of playing inside and outside, and is really, I think you were talking about the Arden Key role. I think the Arden Key role is going to be Charles Amenahu.
I agree.
When it's all said and done, that's his role. We saw him do that quite a bit during his time with the Texans. We're seeing him kind of do that here. This defensive line is solid. You can tell the difference. The other thing really quick, and Nick Bosa didn't play any team, I don't think, in the last 3 days. I know for sure not the last
3 days he hasn't played at all. He played one series 3 days ago, and then he didn't play at all, and then not in the last 2.
And it's good because he's a complete worker of the offense. And this is the healthiest he's been as a veteran with the 49ers, really, when you think about it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. We didn't really get to see him in 2020 because he got injured so early. With where he is right now and the way that he's going out there, it's fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's dominant. The last point I want to see your opinion on, Javon Kinlaw. Javon Kinlaw obviously getting a ramp up because he's coming off injury, the ACL reconstruction. I'm actually kind of I think he's another player, in my opinion, personally, despite going into his 3rd year, still think he's fairly raw in pass rushing. I think it's not like Jackson because they're completely different. Jackson works more with speed. I mean, Kinlaw's fast, but he also works with power as well. But Kinlaw, to me, he's still raw in pass rushing, but I'm impressed in the fact that he's able to stay on the field for majority of the first team reps over the last couple of practices. You saw before, right, where Kinlaw wouldn't really play in team drills and then be limited in team drills. And despite him having rest days, he's had 2 rest days, both after the 49ers off days. Despite him having these planned rest days, they've still put him out on the field a good amount over the last 2 practices that have gone with team drills.
Yeah, Javon Kinlaw has been a bigger part of practice over the first 10 practices this year than he was last year. Last year, I don't remember him going against anybody
right
until after training camp was ramped down and they got rid of the fans, and then that was the first time we saw Nick Bosa on the field with the team, with the defense. That was the first time we saw Javon Kinlaw on the field. So both those guys, I think, are ahead, and I really like what we're seeing out of Javon Kinlaw. Kyle Shanahan, or it was D'Amico Ryans, I think it was yesterday, when he was talking about how he just needs to keep his pad level down.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only concern with him. I think he's going to be. I don't think they're losing anything from a pass rush perspective with him replacing DJ Jones in the base defense. DJ Jones, really good run stopper. He's athletic, but not necessarily the pass rusher. I think we're going to see Javon Kinlaw probably give you about that. And the one negative I'll say is because he gets kind of up too high, so there's too much chest bumping with the offensive lineman. He gets in there and he's pretty quick to stop his rush and just get into the throwing lane. He has a tendency to do that, and that's the only thing there. But the guy's also 6 whatever, and he's tall and does a good job of batting the balls down. But I would like to be able to see him get to the quarterback instead of just playing pass defense.
Right. And in my opinion, that's also a place where I've been impressed by Aaron Banks, because despite he does stand up in a way, Kinlaw, but Banks has been able to hold up in pass pro on a good amount of reps against Kinlaw. But then you also obviously see the potential. I remember 3rd and 3 yesterday. He just bull rushed Daniel Brunskill straight to Trey Lance, forcing a quick throw. And so you see the potential. I still think he's really raw, which is dangerous because he's moving really well right now. If he just gets the technique down, like D'Amico Ryan said, it's going to be the finished product, especially if he can really get incorporated in pass rushing situations like he has been so far, is going to be very, very fun to see.
Yeah, it's looking good, and I'm really excited to see how this defense plays and what happens once they get into week 1, where they're able to just really kind of let it all loose. Linebackers, I think everybody pretty much knows what they have at the linebacker crew, right? Fred Warner, one of the top linebackers in the league. Azeez Al-Shaair, solid. Trey Greenlaw, solid. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, solid. And even Oren Burks. He's Big Chris's favorite guy, right? Big Oren Burks. That's my guy. He's done a good job when he stepped into with the first team and had to kind of be that other linebacker.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you talk about Oren Burks because he's actually rotated sometimes with the first team defense in place of Alshire, and then obviously got the start yesterday with Alshire having a rest day. Has it surprised you that Alshire is the guy consistently out on nickel packages, or did you anticipate that?
Surprise, I don't know, because it had been Trey Greenlaw when Trey Greenlaw's been healthy. It's always kind of been his role to be that guy. So I wouldn't say I'm necessarily surprised. I think that the injury last year gave Alshire a chance to play more. And you go back with Greenlaw, I think they can't lose with either one of those guys. I think that's one of the beauties of that defense is they just have so many guys even at that level, at the linebacker level, where as long as you've got Fred Warner, it doesn't matter who's lining up next to him because he's going to make whoever that other guy is better.
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of like, real quick, it's kind of like in the secondary, right? It's kind of like when you talk about the safeties. I've heard a lot of people wondering about Talanoa Hufanga. Well, Talanoa Hufanga, if he's playing alongside Jimmy Ward, he's going to be just fine.
It's going to be fine. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it originally. And my other quick observation kind of on the linebackers, specifically talking about the backups, we've seen what the 49ers covet. You saw it last year when they moved Marcel Harris, a quicker guy for a linebacker, at least, maybe not so much for a safety, but a quicker guy for a linebacker, play a significant amount. He played 36% of the defensive snaps. Then you talk about their undrafted free agent signings, Segun Olubi and Marcelino McCrary-Ball, both pretty fast linebackers. And then you talk about their signing, Oren Burks, running a 4.48, if I'm not mistaken. He's another fast guy. And obviously with their linebacker pedigree and developing these guys, you're kind of a little more confident. The development has to happen, but you're kind of a little more confident if the 49ers lose one or two of their top linebackers next year, that you have guys at least that can fit the scheme of what they want with their linebackers.
Yeah, Curtis Robinson also.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a really stacked group there of 8 guys. It's kind of crazy when you think about how deep that group is. And really quick before we go on to the secondary, I think you've probably seen it, or you might have seen it yesterday, or if not, hopefully you saw my video of it. But one of the coolest things that I've seen so far was watching yesterday when Fred Warner was working on his pass rush technique with Johnny Holland. Mm-hmm. And then out of the background, you kind of just see Nick Bosa kind of wander over, and he's kind of standing there watching him for a second. And then he gets in there and he does it. And both Holland and Warner start laughing because it's just like, oh shit, I'm over here trying to teach you how to do it. Look what he does. And then it was cool though to see the two of them stand there and talk, and you could see that they were like talking about the technique and so on. And then they split up and they started working on it on their own again. But that was really cool. Two of the best defensive players in the league working together.
Working together.
Yeah, that one helping the other one to get better.
And the one thing you've seen in a way, it's very interesting, right? Because the top guys for the 49ers just want to get each other better. A trio of players that you've kind of seen work together a lot in training camp: Jimmy Ward, Charvarius Ward, and Emmanuel Mosley. You've seen when Mosley had the rest day yesterday, it was Jimmy and Charvarius working together. But you've seen those trio kind of work together, and it's nice because iron sharpens iron. You're getting the top three kind of working with each other and talking with each other during these team drills.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And then also like talking about like that, I've noticed on this, I don't know how, I wish I could take pictures during like team drill, because whenever they're running a team, you've got Jimmy Ward and Talanoa Hufanga. They're always side by side.
Always chatting. Yeah.
If they're off the field, they're always standing right next to each other. I keep wanting to take a picture of that, but at the same time, I like my position, so I don't, because I want to get kicked out. But yeah, it's pretty fantastic. It's cool to see how they all work together so much, and then that gets us into the secondary. We're already talking about it anyway. Any surprises for you in the secondary?
Yeah, there have been.
Real quick, you know what? Real quick, I want to hit this one because he was talking about the D-line. Jay Guayo, thank you again for the super chat, Jay. Awesome. He says, Jack, if we get 12 to 13 games from Kinlaw, I'm good. I think you're going to get 12 to 13 from Kinlaw. I think you might get also more than that. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But appreciate the super chat.
Real quick on this topic, the 49ers signed one player this offseason for this sole reason. If you get only 12 to 13 games and have to miss 4, there's one guy by the name of Hassan Ridgeway who unfortunately has been injured. That's the guy who kind of is a Javon Kinlaw like insurance policy in a way. It's unfortunate that he got injured, but that's in a way making sure that the 49ers are fine if Kinlaw gets out. But Kinlaw's looked really good so far, just from a health standpoint.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I agree. So let's get to the secondary. I'm sorry I cut you off. Your
You're
thoughts
good.
on what we've got going on in the back end.
Yeah, so if we're talking about surprises, there's been kind of one, and it's not with the starters. I thought Emmanuel Mosley would continue. I thought I've kind of been in a steadfast pace that he's the second most underrated player on the 49ers behind Jimmy Ward. I've seen Emmanuel Mosley as a very high end CB2, maybe even a low end CB1, and I think he's confirmed that now. Charvarius Ward was going to be a top option. I knew the talent that he had there. My biggest surprise is cornerback 3. I had high expectations for Ambry Thomas, especially after seeing he bulked up in OTAs and minicamp, looking like he was around 200 pounds. And now CB3 has not been Ambry Thomas. Ambry Thomas isn't even CB4, maybe even CB5. CB3 has been Deommodore Lenoir. And Lenoir has had a strong camp after potentially being on the cutting, like potentially being cut. Like at least being looked at as one of those candidates by several fans. And Thomas has significantly struggled. He's looked, in my opinion, a little lighter than he was coming in at minicamp and OTAs. And while Thomas has struggled, Lenoir has kind of accelerated his play.
Yeah, I feel bad for Lenoir. I not Lenoir, excuse me, but Ambry Thomas. I a couple of days ago I was standing there and I said to I think it was Grant that was saying next to me, I said, hey, you want to complete a ball, you throw it at 20 because he's just struggling. And it was the deep balls, he really started to, it shows up big time on the deep ball, and it's really kind of gone through everything. And I think he's just really struggling. I think he's in his head a little bit. I'm not, I don't know. I'm guessing that I feel like it's, he's struggling mentally with it because that's a tough position. When you start to lose repeatedly, you're out there on an island, everybody can see you losing. And I think that's a little bit of an issue. And it just seems to be that he just gets beat on a regular basis. Doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Ayuk, Danny Gray, or Ray McLeod. It's a rough go of it out there. And I'm not sure Raymond's asking, what it seems to be his issue. And I don't know if it's speed or technique. I'm not sure. I'm not good enough to be able to break down his technique like Crocker would probably be able to give you a better answer on that.
Yeah, and I mean, here's what I've seen from Ambry Thomas, right, in the 49ers. Originally, what the 49ers did was they played him in soft coverage. They played him 7 yards or so off, surprisingly, given his 4.38 speed, and then played the slower corner, Deommodore Lenoir, in press coverage. Lenoir played well in press coverage, but Thomas playing soft coverage. Thomas has never been a zone coverage guy. He's struggled really with his responsibilities in zone coverage. So on those inside routes, Thomas doesn't pick up the receiver quick enough. And while he does have good traits, he doesn't necessarily – I think his mental game is kind of what's lacking right now because he doesn't pick up the receiver fast enough. Receiver is already on his end break. It's going to be a 15-yard catch. And that's where you hear some of these comments about him giving up 15, 20-yard catches every day because sometimes it's that soft coverage. Then the 49ers tried to get back, boosting his confidence. They moved him back to press coverage, which in my opinion is where he's at his strong suit. 2 things, or actually 3 things happened. He did have a couple of good reps in one-on-ones at least. I know he locked up Danny Gray on a comeback route on one route, but there were times where he held receivers. He held Malik Turner on a go route because he struggled a little bit coming off the break. And then the other thing was when Thomas is there, it's not like he's exhibiting bad coverage, but he continuously loses at the catch point. It was time and time again where he's having good reps and then losing at the catch point. And the 49ers in that point can't afford to continuously give up deep catches at the catch point, even though it's good coverage. Like the point is that's one part of the equation, but you need the second part of the equation because you can't consistently give up 20-yard catches in that route. And so they've gone back to playing Thomas in soft coverage because while it might be a 7-yard slant every single time, it's better than a 20-yard route.
Oh yeah, and that's what we saw last year, right? That's what we saw in the second half of the year, and that's one of the reasons why they went out and he had to go out and get Charvarius Ward, and that changes the defense around, and then who knows what's going to happen with Jason Verrett? I think Verrett's going to start the season on the PUP, and I think we probably see him around the middle of the season for the first time. When it comes to Verrett, I just think the cornerback room's very interesting to me. The one guy I really liked him before camp, and I still do.
Mhm.
Sam Womack, I really like what this guy's doing. I think I think Sam Womack has the ability to play outside if they wanted him to. They've been playing him inside though to get him, reps there, and he's gotten better. My one question on Womack was his ability to tackle and
Yeah.
support in the run game. And he hasn't shown any fear with that. He's shown the willingness to stick his nose in there
Exactly.
a few
There
times.
was real quick. There was that one play I remember. It was a Sudfeld screen to Malik Turner, and Womack just sprinted through the gap. That's where that speed comes in. Sprinted to the gap, immediately got to Malik Turner after 1 yard, and like the awareness there on that type of play to not only shed or at least avoid the incoming blockers and getting there. That's something that they covet. I think Womack is going to do well in the blitzes, given his traits, which is a big thing. The defensive back blitz from the nickel, which K'Wan Williams was good at. I'm going to say the jury for me at least is still out in the tackling business because while at least I like his aggression, I can't take too much away because players aren't tackling in camp. But the coverage so far, I'm liking what I've seen in the second day. Yesterday, it was yesterday. Yesterday was his best day of camp, in my opinion, by far. He started to cycle in with the ones. He played primarily with the twos yesterday, but he locked up Jawan Jennings on a route where Nate Sudfeld threw the ball a little too far wide, and I think it would have been a PBU had he thrown it on target. And then on the second play, he recorded a PBU on a pass as well. So he had a good day yesterday, and those long arms, you can definitely see how those long arms are coming into play. I can definitely understand him potentially playing on the outside, but I personally think the 49ers will want to use him as a slot corner. And they're slowly, I think we'll see it in the practices that you're going to get to go to, slowly paving the way for him to take the starting job and then Darqueze Dennard to be cut because it saves them a spot in an area where they have so many young guys that they might want to carry onto the 53-man roster.
Yeah, and that's what Jay is asking is in our opinion, who's winning that slot corner? I think Dennard is winning it right now. He's leading that battle. I think the thing there, it'll be interesting to see if Dennard makes the roster or not. I think there could be a situation where Dennard starts the season on the roster. Again, thinking that Jason Verrett doesn't make the roster because he's on PUP. And so you think that, maybe it's going to be Dennard early on. And then when it's time to bring Verrett back, it's Dennard that goes because you can slide at that point. Womack's he's been seasoned for a few weeks and then he can maybe slide into that spot. It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. That the roster maneuvering right there is going to be interesting in the secondary because that's a tough one. Shanahan talked about it a couple of days, I think last week, about the need to have, about how he talked about the difference at the different positions in the corners. The outside corners are your fast guys. The slot can be a little bit slower, but he also talked about how you only have so many guys up on game day and you need guys to be able to play multiple roles. And, they kind of got away with it with K'Wan Williams because that's all he could play was in the inside. He couldn't play outside. And that's kind of where I feel like they are with Darqueze Dennard. He can only play in the slot. He's not a guy that they're going to want to put out on the edge. And so I think that, maybe his time with the team either is going to be ended after training camp or it's going to be at some point early in the season where they make room with him on the roster for a guy that can play multiple positions. And, that's what Dante Johnson's so good at, right? He can play in the slot. He can play outside. He can play safety. He's kind of like the Daniel Brunskill of the secondary where you can just put him wherever you need him and he's going to be solid.
And the bigger thing, he can play special teams. That's something that Dennard doesn't necessarily play. And one thing that Shanahan has consistently done over really in his entire regime here, he doesn't want players that can just play special teams. He wants players that have multifaceted roles. Even if they suck at that role at times, he'll play players. A perfect example that I bring up, punt returner last year, Travis Benjamin or Nsimba Webster. Nsimba Webster is a better punt returner for sure than Travis Benjamin. He, in my opinion, was a better special teamer, but he didn't offer enough as a receiver. Benjamin did. We saw it on those deep plays sometimes with Lance. And Benjamin was a guy that 49er fans dreaded when he came out on the field for his 40 plays last year. But he still, in a way, had that multifaceted role, which Shanahan covets at that special teams position. And when you look at the players they signed this year, McLeod, he's a receiver, but he's going to play special teams. George Odom, he's a safety, but he's going to play special teams. And then the final guy was Oren Burks. He's a linebacker that's developable, but he's going to play special teams. So you need these. At least Shanahan likes these guys that can play these dual roles, which is why some of these guys don't necessarily have as big of a shot as some other emerging candidates.
Absolutely. Thank you real quick, Jay. I know you're heading out, but I appreciate it. And I like yours. I agree with what you're saying there. And then Brian Colpin, the member of the Toolbox there, he says, Robbie Gold, that like button, everybody. Absolutely. No, I think it's going to be fun to watch how this team all gets put together. I'm always fascinated by the guys and how they can, because they know these guys better than we do because they're seeing them in the meeting rooms and that stuff as well. But the 49ers have this knack for finding guys like Brunskill and Dante Johnson who just continue to make Dante Johnson's kind of a meme in a way because he's always on and off the team. He's been around.
Death, taxes, and Dante Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. He's been here as long as Jimmy Ward, and never really been a standout player at any point. But he's so good at what he does. It's fun to see. So I'm looking forward to it. Real quick before we head out, we show that we break this one down. A couple of funny comments over in I just got to go back to Trey Lance for a second because this is pretty funny. I don't know if you see them in the comment, but we got Shylock Swindlefolk. That's a great name to start off with. He says that Trey Lance can win a game in 20 minutes. He only needs 20 minutes. 20 minutes for Trey Lance. And not only that, but he says that Trey Lance can score a touchdown from B-Dub, Buffalo Wild Wings. So Shylock Swindlefolk, my new favorite, maybe my second or third, most interesting man in my comment section. I love it. Shylock Swindlefolk. That's fantastic.
What a name. What a name.
Yeah, fantastic. And then real quick, so we're here and I know you've got your own channel, Rohan. What have you got coming up this week? I know you're going to be at practice, but beyond that.
Yeah, so I go to practice tomorrow, obviously, go to practice Wednesday. Every single day afterwards, I am able to come home, do the live streams every single day, breaking down what I see. And then we might have some extra fun things because the first preseason game is this Friday. So be on the lookout for Thursday. We might have a preseason game breakdown, what we might want to see from 49ers players on that day and things like that with my co-host Marco Martinez and maybe a special guest. And yeah, so that's kind of like the vibe for this week. It's going to be a fun week because training camp is coming to a close. Will we see a ramp up? Will we see a kind of ramp down? What will we see extra? But make sure to tune in to my channel over there. It's just my name, as you see on the screen. And that's what's going to happen over the next couple of days.
Fantastic. And then real quick, I got to shout this guy out because he is 2:45 in the morning in Austria. Lucas does a great job. I don't understand what he's saying on Twitter, but thankfully they have a Google Translate over there so I can understand what he's saying. But it's fantastic. He's 2:45 in the morning. Him and Gav over in Wales and the international flavor is fantastic with this show. So that's awesome. Raphael 5629ers. He always keeps me on task with this, tells me to make sure to tells everybody to like and subscribe. So please do that. And then, Rohan just said he's got his own channel. He's been killing it during training camp with his reports. Get over it's his name, Rohan. You might want to just copy and paste it because I'm not even going to try to repeat it because I suck with names. But get over to Rohan's channel and subscribe over there and show him the love that he deserves for the work that he's putting in because it's not easy going to training camp practice. Sounds like it's easy going to football and watch football practice all day long, but when you're trying to do it and then you're reporting on it and you're doing all these kind of things, it becomes a little bit of it's not as hard as it is for the players, but it becomes a little bit of a grind for sure. So show them some love.
Thank you, Jack. And real quick, because I struggle with the names too, I don't, but subscribe to Mr. Jack Naylor here and his channel. No, I'm joking. Subscribe to Jack here. Great show and obviously a great host. Be sure to subscribe to his channel, and I'm sure he's going to be plugging y'all with content soon.
I see what you did right there. I see what you did. I couldn't get your last
name. I might have misspoke just a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. No, Rohan Chakravarthi, correct?
Close enough. We'll say that.
Man, damn.
It's okay.
I'll
give you a pass today.
I'm gonna study on that thing like I'm Trey Lance looking at the playbook, and I'm gonna get it right the next time we do a show.
Like him catching a touchdown from B-Dubs. Yeah,
exactly. He's gonna be like he's scoring a touchdown from B-Dubs. Absolutely. So Chakravarthi. That's what it is.
Hey, that's good. Perfect.
Better,
there we
right?
go.
Okay. See, Jan there, he's helping me. He's helping me sound it out on the bottom there. So no, thanks a lot for you coming on and giving me an hour and 40 minutes of your time. Same with everybody in the comment section. You guys have been fantastic over there as well. So Rohan, thank you. Fans, thank you. Before you head out, I always tell you to do 4 things. Get to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Make that a favorite on your web browser so you can check it out every day after practice. And then once the season starts, there's going to be something every day. So get over there and check that out. They're the ones that pay the bills. And then on top of that, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you liked what you saw tonight and you want to see more of it. And then also hit the little bell notification so that every time we go live, you can see it. And you get notified and you're here. You're not tardy. So thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday. We will both be at training camp tomorrow. So keep an eye out on both of our channels for our reports. Until tomorrow, take care. Have a great Monday. Talk to you all soon.